Last week, Queensland became the first Australian state to ban pill testing of illicit drugs. The decision was made after the state government had withheld for 3 months an independent assessment of the first 12 months of testing at dedicated centres and music festivals. As the Brisbane Channel is about all things that affect people living in Greater Brisbane's 5 LGAs, when I finally got access to the report that had been suppressed for so long, I had to share it with you all. Special thanks to the viewer who sent me the link. Let me quickly remind you of the context before we get to what the findings of the report handed over to the state government in early June were. In April of 2024, the state government, which was led by Labor Premier Stephen Miles, announced the funding of 2 pill testing labs, one on the Gold Coast and one in Brisbane, as well as mobile testing at Queensland music festivals, and also at schoolies. This was announced along with the promise of a 12-month independent assessment of the service, which would determine the ways in which the service did or didn't reduce the harm caused by illegal drug use in order to establish a statewide framework for delivering drug checking services. In October, Queenslanders voted in an LNP-led government with David Crisafulli at the helm as Premier. Researchers from the University of Queensland continued their pill testing study, but in April this year, the new state government chose not to renew funding for the service. In June, the assessment was delivered to the government, who then refused to release it to the public until the evening they passed the law that forbade private funding of pill testing, ultimately making it illegal for privately funded drug checking, while they also refused to provide government funding for it. So the real question I had prior to reading the report was, what data was in the report that led the state government to regard pill testing as a harmful initiative? Well, let me share the key findings laid out in the report, and you can make up your own mind when it comes to whether the government's decision to ban pill testing was well-founded or not. I won't go into the details of the 185-page document, as there's a lot in it, from the type of people using the service to their motivations for doing so, challenges in delivering the service, and key considerations for future implementation. But there are some key findings that give a general view of the benefits and challenges of the pill testing service. Firstly, the assessment found that pill testing provided valuable harm reduction. 43% of samples tested contained unexpected substances, with a significant portion of those containing unexpected psychoactive compounds. Services provided access to referrals to other health services, including peer workers, needle and syringe programs, counselling and GPs. These referrals allowed for the continued provision of harm reduction beyond the drug checking services. Harm reduction interventions were found to have led to changes in the behaviour of clients, including 2 in 5 of them reporting that they didn't end up using the sample they'd had tested. 1 in 5 used less of the tested sample, and 1 in 10 disposed of at least one tested sample. In both follow-up surveys and interviews, clients also reported reductions in use of multiple substances at the same time, less frequent use, and increased knowledge of different aspects of their substance use. Clients also received information about rehabilitation services to address drug addiction. Client interaction with drug checking services increased distribution of naloxone into the broader community and the population groups at risk of overdose. Naloxone is medication used to rapidly reverse or reduce the effects of an opioid overdose by restoring normal breathing. It's available for free under the federal government's Take-Home Naloxone program. Detection of dangerous substances in tested samples also helped inform broader clinical networks across the state, with alerts to the presence of several nitazines and a novel hallucinogen made possible as the result of drug checking services. Nitazines are synthetic opioids that can be hundreds of times stronger than heroin and can put people at high risk of overdose. During the 12-month assessment, Checkpoint, who ran the testing facilities, issued 8 different public drug alerts for substances discovered through their testing. An additional 7 drug notices were shared with Queensland Health based on substances found through testing at the Rabbits Eat Lettuce Music Festival, and 3 more had been detected during the Wildlands Festival. Drug checking services were also found to be an important source of insight and data from which drug harm reduction strategies could be formulated. Some of the unexpected consequences of the service included some clients presenting with more complex needs than initially expected, with some being referred to mental health, housing and employment support services after visiting the service. There were also reports of clients changing the person they obtained their drugs from as a result of drug check findings. Another unexpected situation that arose was people bringing in drugs that were not their own for testing, such as parents bringing in drugs they'd found in their children's possession. While the service was unable to test the drugs, as consent by the owner was not given, they were able to provide advice and support to help frame future discussions with the child about drug use from a harm reduction perspective. But perhaps the most important observation is demonstrated in the response of one stakeholder when asked about the service. There's no details about who the stakeholder is, but I think it's likely they're coming from a music festival setting, who said, "We normally send 5 to 8 people to the hospital every year with overdoses that we can't treat locally. This year we sent no one, and we're relatively confident it's because the people knew what they were taking. We still had drug-affected people, but they're not as high. They're not overdosing, they're not medically unwell." But the assessment also looked at the challenges to reducing harm through the services. Some barriers to the success of the program identified included limited funding and the challenges brought by relying largely on volunteers who had other commitments. Other challenges noted was the view held by some that drug checking services endorse substance use or that the substances are returned to clients with assurances of safety. Clients who had used the services never reported safety assurances in discussions with the service providers, and in fact it was reported that some people not only reduced their use of drugs, but also stopped drinking alcohol as a result of interactions with the service. I searched the document for anything that might give the government cause to ban the testing. The closest I could find is a limitation in the evidence so far regarding the extent to which the service saves lives, where the researchers say, while pill testing services can reduce some harms, there is limited evidence about the extent to which they reduce drug-related morbidity and mortality. It's not saying that services don't save lives, just that at this stage there's insufficient evidence to conclude that they do with any certainty, or at least to what extent they do. There was definitely no suggestion in the report of anything that indicated pill testing increased harm from illicit drugs or encouraged their use, as all data pointed to a reduction in harm and even a reduction in the use of drugs by clients of the services. The report suggested expanding the service, not banning it. I think the only other thing that could cause concern was the admission that limitations in current testing technologies mean not all harmful substances can be reliably or rapidly tested. So while many very harmful substances were able to be detected, there were some that have gone undetected. That's a very brief look at the main contents of the assessment. I've put a link to the full assessment in the video description if you want to take a look at the document in its entirety. I've tried to be neutral in what parts of the report I shared in the video, but of course there are details I've included and others I've left out. There's just a lot of information in it. I guess the two main questions I'd like to leave you with are these. Firstly, what do you think would have given the state government a reason to withhold the assessment from the public until they imposed a ban on the services? And secondly, what do you make of the decision to ban the services in the light of the conclusions the 12-month assessment of pill testing came to? I've given my 2 cents on the issue in the last weekly update video, which will be linked here in a moment, so I'll leave you to consider where you stand on the matter. But one thing I would say is that my personal opinion is it really appears that the Crisafulli government is so focused on maintaining their tough on crime image that they're willing to knowingly dismiss and disregard the safety of Queenslanders who do use illegal drugs and ignore the evidence that drug checking initiatives not only reduce harm from illicit substances, but in some cases may even reduce their use. If you have some information that would prove that opinion wrong, please do share it, as I would really love to be wrong about that. See ya.